Greetings ladies and gentlefish, and welcome back to another World of Tanks video. And I thought we'd do something a little different this time. So before I actually get onto what the video is about, the backdrop you're going to be seeing is a couple of very well-timed replays from My Name is Puffs. I decided I wanted to do this video before Puffs had sent me all these replays. At the time of recording, he sent this replay yesterday. But you'll see why these are apt as the video progresses. So Puffs, just in this first video, for example, is driving the Tier 8 Premium Soviet Heavy Tank. This is the 703-122, the first double-barreled tank in the game. So, the content of this video, I thought, given that we are moving from 2021 to moving from 2020 to 2021. And I think a lot of people will be hoping that the Game of Life developers give the whole year thing a bit of a buff, because most people seem to consider 2020 was a little bit of a write-off. I thought it might be a good time to take a look back at World of Tanks and everyone's favourite subject, loot boxes. People tend to get very emotive about this subject, and I'm going to try and give my views on it here, which some people are probably going to find quite mundane, and my predictions for what's going to happen in the future, maybe. We'll see how it goes. So, as the sort of 2020 to 2021 kind of festive events in the game are winding down, it's interesting to note a couple of things. So firstly, this is, believe it or not, actually the 4th year that Wargaming have run some sort of festive loot boxy type thing for the festive period. And 4th year, like, it took me a while just to kind of properly appreciate that. It's been going a little while at this point. So it doesn't seem like, despite some people's protestations, Wargaming are going to take it away anytime soon. In fact, actually, for anyone who's paying attention, you might have noticed that the Waffenträger auf E100 event, the last Waffle Throw, whatever it's called, was actually another loot box event. Just something worth noting. So I think these are actually going to become more common rather than less common. So people seem to have views on loot boxes, which is understandable. And as far as I can work out, generally speaking, people seem to fall into one of two camps. Either they think loot boxes are absolutely fine, there's literally no problem with them whatsoever, and anyone who thinks there is a problem should reconsider their opinions. Or they think loot boxes are the devil's work, and anybody who thinks they're fine is the spawn of Satan or something. And people like their extreme opinions. And I find myself falling somewhere in between. So I can understand why some people might take issue with loot boxes. I personally don't like them as a concept. However, my reasons might be a little bit different to some people. So, personally, I do think loot boxes are an exploitative, I guess, marketing gimmick. But I don't think they're any more exploitative than any other marketing gimmick used by any company over the years. So I don't have any more of a moral obligation to them than I do about, well, many other marketing techniques. Let's be honest, especially in free-to-play titles, it's quite common to use kind of gambling addiction type mechanics, I guess. Pause. Restart. I mean, their whole model, I suppose, is built on the premise of encouraging people to continually play something and to shell out money for stuff they don't really need. And personally, I find actually the most exploitative of these techniques tend to be aimed at kids, which bothers me on principle, because by definition, kids, minors, children are a vulnerable group to target. So I don't take any more of an issue with it than I do really any other marketing technique. And I, generally speaking, see it as people's own responsibility to deal with their own finances and to come to their own conclusions about whether or not they can afford to take part in the whole loot box thing. However, I do take issues with it. And it's worth pointing out, loot boxes as a concept have actually been around for a very, very long time. Anyone ever played collectible card games of any description? I used to play Pokemon, I used to play Magic the Gathering. Card boosters, booster packs, are essentially loot boxes. You don't know exactly what you're getting. You're just given some vague parameters of what the contents of a booster pack will be, and you buy it based on those loose parameters. Like I say, it's essentially a loot box. Anyway, so what are my issues with the whole loot box thing? Well, I have a couple of issues. One, if the content is exclusive. So, the Object 703, sorry, not Object, the 703-122 here was the one of the loot box rewards from last year's festive event. And there was a lot of hubbub about it because it was the first double-barreled tank in the game and so on. And a lot of people were saying, oh my god, this thing's quite good. And my issue would then be that if it were not possible to acquire this tank through other means, then that is kind of the very definition of pay to win. Because you have to shell out money for a loot box in order to acquire this tank, and it then stops being... let me rewind. I'm going to use the Magic the Gathering as an example. For anyone who doesn't know, Magic the Gathering and similar, like Pokemon, similar collectible card games, you buy boosters and you get a random assortment of cards, but then there will also exist a market in which you can buy the cards individually. And that stops the whole thing getting ridiculous, because if you're really after that one card that you just never seem to get, you can shell out a little bit of money and you can buy the card on its own, and I think that's fine. And by the same token, providing that loot boxes are done, provided that the content in loot boxes you can subsequently buy on its own, then in the same vein I don't take as much issue with it. It's the exclusivity that would bother me. But as it turns out, you can buy, or in the advent calendar that we've had this year, the E75TS has been available on one of the days, and this thing, the 703-122, has been available as the sort of crowning offer type thing. You know, there's a crowning offer at the end that runs for a week, blah 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 blah, and it's been this thing. So that seems to not be a particularly well-founded concern in this specific example. So that's okay, I guess. So that's fine. I don't really have an issue with that. And that's one of my main objections to loot boxes as a concept. Now, the other reason that I won't buy loot boxes... Well, the other thing is a personal thing for me, and this is the reason I do not buy loot boxes. So, I personally wouldn't be buying a loot box for the gold, or for the premium time, or for the credits, or for the directives. I would be buying it for the premium tank. And if I were to put money in to buy loot boxes, and I were not to get the premium tank or tanks that I wanted, I know I would quite find that an incredibly frustrating experience and would classify it as a waste of money. So I'm not willing to do that, and so I don't buy loot boxes. This year, Pansy has actually been generous enough to gift me some loot boxes, a lovely little Christmas present. Many thanks to Pansy. And I was quite lucky in what I got from them. I got 11 loot boxes, or whatever they call them, festive crates or whatever it is. And I got, among other things, I got some little low tier premiums, some gold, etc. But I got the Bourrasque, the French premium medium tank, and I also got the Bisonte, which is kind of this year's oh my god, it's a shiny new tank, this is a new type of tank, new tech tree sort of thing. It's this year's equivalent of the 7032 here, in terms of hype and all that jazz. So I've been quite fortunate in that regard. But that means I won't buy loot boxes, but that's not a moral objection, that's just a personal choice. If you choose to buy loot boxes, I have no issue with that, and I don't see that, again, I don't really see that as a moral decision personally. So that's kind of my stance on the whole loot box thing. I don't really like them per se. I would, I guess, rather the game didn't have them. But if they're going to be implemented, then I would like the content to be available outside of loot boxes. And oh, Puffs just went down there. He was the last one left alive, to be fair. And I'm personally still not gonna buy them, because I would just find it very frustrating and annoying to not get what I wanted, and what I would want would be the premium tanks. That's just me, that's what I value. So while I was wittering on, Puffs, bless his heart, kind of stood his ground and did his best in that game, and did pretty well, but it wasn't quite enough to overcome the hordes of enemy tanks coming in to assail his position. So let's have a look at the post-game stats for this one. So that was enough for Ace Tanker, Bruiser, Duelist, Fighter, Fire for Effect, and a High Caliber medal for Puffs there. 5,681 damage done, 5 kills, 1,086 base experience, but remembering on a defeat, that does not yet include the bonus for Heroic Resistance. We'll get to that in a second. Shout out should probably go to the friendly Super Hellcat Aralok, 2.4k damage in a bottom tier tank there. That's a pretty good result from him. And the enemy object 263 and KV3 with over 4,000 damage in his object 263 top tier tank destroyer, and 2,500 damage in his bottom tier heavy tank respectively. That's Crisis 276. So well done to those guys. 31 shots fired, 26 hits, 17 pens for that damage count, none of which was from more than 300 meters. 26 hits received, of which only 4 penetrated, 3,890 damage blocked by his armour, a little bit of assistance damage, and with a premium account, even though it was a loss, and even though he spent, Puffs there, spent 64,000 credits on ammunition, that was still, and 20,000 credits on consumables, and of course almost 10,000 credits repairing his tank, that was still a 220,500 credit profit. It's a lot of cash. So that 1,086 base XP was supplemented with 590 for some achievements of some description, 251 for his vehicle tier, 377 for playing in a platoon, and of course the achievement in this case will be the Heroic Resistance contribution. So very well done to Puffs there. A very hard fought game, just a shame that he wasn't able to pull a win out of the bag at the end. It is what it is, I'm afraid. So, I've got another game for you, courtesy of Puffs. So, here we go with our second game then. Puffs once more, and this time he's driving the C45 Bisonte. Do you see what I mean about these replays just being well lined up with the topic of this video? This was the tank that kind of got all the attention from the loot boxes this year, despite the fact that after it actually came out and people got their hands on it, people seemed to start making much more of a fuss about the G-Saw, the British auto-loading tank destroyer. But nonetheless, this is still an interesting little tank, and I am curious to see how it pans out, because, again, thanks to Pansy, I actually own this one. Now, I would be curious to see what people think of the whole loot box thing inside this game. What direction people think it's going to go in. I think it's going to be more prevalent, because I'm pretty sure it's making Wargaming a shed ton of money. And also people might want to chip in on what they think about the fact that the, like for example, when the 703 that we saw in the previous video was offered as part of the Advent calendar this year, It was offered for a monetary price only. You could not buy it with the hard-bought gold, I guess, that you had from your loot boxes. Now, this is not the first time we've seen something like that from Wargaming, but I'd be curious what your thoughts are. Just a quick reminder, you guys don't need reminding, I shouldn't think, but I'll mention it anyway. Just a quick reminder, people are going to disagree, and that's fine. You don't all have to agree on everything, you don't have to convince people of anything. By the same token, if you want to have a nice little conversation about it, that's absolutely fine. Just try and keep it fairly civil. This is a game at the end of the day, and people don't play it and talk about it to get all stressed. So, the Basante. Like I said, I actually own this tank now, so I'm interested in this thing and what sets this tank apart. So this is the first Italian heavy tank in the game. Tier 8 premium. Wargaming tend to like releasing tech trees, tech lines with a premium tank first. These days, more often than not, Tier 8. And this thing, you get the auto reloader, similar to what you get for the Italian medium tanks, but you get this kind of compensation mechanic, so that if you fire the gun, I believe it's within 2 seconds of your reload, you get some of that time compensated back. Or it's within a certain time period of the reload of the gun. You get some time back, essentially. So, in short, what it means is, I'm not giving a full description of the mechanic, but in essence, it makes the tank a little less punishing to play, basically. Now, I think this thing looks like a pretty good machine. I mean, you have decent turret armor. It's not impenetrable, but decent turret armor. You have, what is this, a 105mm gun? A 105mm gun with 360 alpha. 218 pen is a little on the low side for a tier 8 heavy tank, but it's not appalling. There are heavy tanks at tier 8 with less pen than that don't get limited matchmaking. You have, so that's respectable alpha damage. You have 10 degrees of gun depression. You seem to be a pretty mobile tank. And you get an auto reloader, so you can switch between single shot and auto loader. I mean, that seems like a pretty good combination to me. And I can't remember the base view range of this thing off the top of my head, but as you can see, if you look at the minimap, Puffs has clearly managed to get a very respectable view range out of it, as he's, at the very least, got 445 meters going on, because that's up to the spotting limit in the game. So, I mean, it looks like a very respectable tank to me. I think maybe people were expecting it to be some OP death wagon, and were disappointed when it actually had some weaknesses. I don't know, not sure. What I would say is that the fact that people seem to be looking at this tank and be slightly disappointed, I do find quite funny. Oh, even 90, no. Because I'm pretty sure had this tank been released way back in the dawny mists of time on this game, nice shot there, it would have been considered overpowered. I mean, just to put it into some sort of perspective, the Lerva back in the day, before its various buffs, had pretty weak hull armor. Respectable turret, but only 8 degrees of gun depression, not 10. 320 alpha, not 360. A long reload, certainly over 10 seconds. I can't remember what the base reload on it is. And, like, just terrible DPM. And that was considered at the time okay. So, just interesting how the game moves on, I guess. Anyway, let's actually have a look at what Puffs is properly doing in this game. So for anyone who's not really played auto-loaders, or auto-reloaders before, I should say, the essential shtick is that you're halfway between a single shotgun and an auto-loader. So you load shells like you do with an auto-loader, but instead of an auto-loader where you load an entire magazine in one go, and until that magazine is loaded you can fire nothing, an auto-reloader loads the shells one by one. So that means that you can have a half-full magazine, you know, half-loaded, and still fire the gun. Now, the flip side is that the further into the magazine you go, the longer your subsequent reload becomes. So it's a pretty typical is the word I wanted to use, kind of cost-benefit type mechanic, or risk-reward type mechanic. If you wish to dip into the autoloader, into the magazine further, to get more damage at that specific moment in time, puffs, is that worth it? I'm not convinced it is. Then you lose out on DPM. That shot was definitely worth it though, to kill the IS-22. You lose out on DPM in the longer run, so it depends what kind of fight you're expecting to get into. And generally speaking, I think the intention is that if you use this gun as a single shotgun, it will be inferior to a single shotgun, similar single shotgun found on a similar type tank. And if you use it as an autoloader, it will be inferior to a similar type autoloader. What you're paying for is the flexibility to switch between the two. One thing I've noticed is that the gun handling does not look particularly good. I haven't gone through the stats of this tank in great detail, so I don't know if that's strictly true. I'm just going on my impression from this game. But the gun handling does not look fantastic, so I'm thinking with equipment 2.0, I'm thinking it might be worth double stacking, vertical stabilizer, and an improved rotation mechanism. And then for the third equipment slot, either going vents and taking advantage of the extra bonus that we'll get in the survivability slot, because this is a heavy tank, or possibly even going coated optics. It depends what the base view range of this tank is, and it depends how good the crew is, of course. As I haven't gone down the heavy line, I haven't really gone down the Italian line at all yet, it's quite likely that I'm going to be training a crew in this thing, so the crew is possibly going to start off a bit dodgy. Then again, I do have a bunch of girlies to recruit, so maybe I'll just recruit an entire girly crew. We'll see. You know, girls and those sort of free brothers-in-arms skill crews seem to have become more common these days. Something else I could have a whinge about, but anyway. In fact, so just as a quick aside, I do find that I think Wargaming's approach to premium tanks, or their attitude to premium tanks these days, questionable. Ooh, nice bounce on the SU there, and goodbye, Mr. Pantera. By which I mean Wargaming are insistent, essentially, that they won't nerf premium tanks. But then, so let me give you two examples. So we've got the Progetto, the Italian Progetto. Wargaming decided to remove the ability to use a gun rammer from the Italian auto reloaders, which was always a curious thing for them to have, but they decided to remove that. But for the Progetto, the premium one, what they decided to do was add the 10% DPM buff into its base DPM. So essentially not remove the autoloader, but still allow the tank to take 3 equipment slots on top of that. So that was a flat out buff. The other tank that springs to mind is the French Tier 5 artillery piece, the Le Fer, I can't remember its name. That thing. So back in the day, artillery used to get harsher matchmaking, so they were balanced around the fact that they would see higher tier tanks. Ooh, another nice kill there. And so the Le Fer used to shoot up tier 6s or 7s or something, I can't remember exactly what it was. And when Wargaming changed artillery, over the numerous times they've changed it, because they refused to nerf, explicitly nerf premium tanks, they gave the Le Fer the same matchmaking changes they were giving to all the other artillery. But they didn't change its characteristics at all. So what you now have is a tank that's designed, balanced around shooting higher tier tanks, but it only sees tier 7 maximum. Like that thing can be shooting at tier 4s. I've been playing a lot of tier 5 and some tier 6 games lately, and getting hit by that thing, and if you're in a more lightly armoured tank like the Skoda, tier 5 medium tank, the Skoda T24 I think it is, you lose like 70% of your health from one penetrating hit from that thing, and it will penetrate. And then it will reload in, I don't know what the exact reload is, but it feels like it's under 10 seconds, and then it will kill you. And it has relatively good gun handling, and it's laser accurate. Anyway, so what I'm questioning is Wargaming's desire to not explicitly nerf premium tanks, but they will implicitly, like, because changes to the wider game do buff and nerf those tanks anyway. If they go around and remove loads of camouflage from maps, that's a nerf to tanks like tank destroyers that tend to rely or tend to utilise that same camo. But they won't explicitly nerf them, and in fact they will even go to the lengths of buffing them just so the players don't feel like they're being nerfed or something. I'm not looking this from at at this from an economic perspective, obviously, but I'm looking at this more from a gameplay perspective. I'm not a wargaming CEO or whatever. But it does seem to me to be a very worrisome way of doing things. This has turned into a little bit of a rant, and I didn't mean it to. So I guess I'd be curious about people's opinions on that as well, to be fair. I mean, I think wargaming should nerf tanks, whether they're premium or not, regardless of whether people have spent money on them or not. I'm not going to go into details about every argument for and against it, but that's my opinion. Yours may differ, feel free to disagree. I'd be curious to know your opinions on that as well. Anyway, Puff's here while I've been wittering on in his Basante. In a game that it didn't feel that special, but on the other hand, Puffs has just steadily been racking up the damage and the kills. That's 8 kills in a tier 8 match, which is very nice. Like, all credit to him. So, for the last time in this video, let's have a look at the post-game stats. So there we go, that was enough for an ace tanker for Puffs there in the Basante. Along with Bruiser, Duelist, FIFO Effect, Shellproof, Ribbons, a Top Gun, and a Radley Walters medal for picking up 8 kills, which is not a medal you see every day in a tier 8 machine. 3,150 damage done there, 8 kills, which if you actually work it out, is somewhere in the region of 400 damage per kill. So Puffs was definitely securing some of those kills there, but that's not a criticism. And shout out should also go to EK in his Basante C45. Actually did more damage, but only got the 1 kill there. And on the enemy team, their Basante, or one of their Basantes, Sergeant Trust, 3.2k damage. So well done to him. 14 shots fired, 14 hits, 13 pens for that damage count. 7 hits received, only 2 penetrated, 2.2k damage blocked by his armour. 128,000 credits in 12 minutes. And a nice amount of experience. So yeah, the Basante to me looks like it could be quite a nice tank. I'm not sure it's going to be overpowered as all hell in the current game, but I'll look forward to playing mine when I get round to it. So there we go. That was a rather more rambly video than I actually intended, but hey, for these sorts of things, I'll be honest, I don't write a script. I go for more of a stream of consciousness. Some might consider it more of a trickle than a stream, and some might consider it less of consciousness and more of you've been up since 5 AM with a small child and your brain is a little bit dead. But it is what it is. So, if you're watching this video at the time when it is released, I hope you are having a nice start to 2021. I hope I'm having a nice start to 2021 as well. I hope you enjoyed that video, maybe found it vaguely interesting. By all means, feel free to throw your opinions, comments down in the comments section. Just try to remember, other people will probably disagree with you, and that's fine. And either way, I will put links in the video descriptions to things like Discord if you want Discord, and all that good stuff. If you want to submit your own replays to me, you're going to want that Discord link. Upload your replay to whatreplays.com and shove the URL in a link on Discord. And as ever, I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. And once again, a happy new year. Ciao ciao.